Hey folks, Joe Valley here. Thanks for joining me for another episode of the Quiet Light Podcast. Today's guest is Dan Smith. He's a former Hollywood producer, worked on a number of different things. I think it was CBS Children's something or other, but that didn't stand out. I can't remember that one as much as the fact that he worked for Playboy as well and helped them promote and sell their digital products. That was a fun part of the story, but he's really an EXITpreneur as well. So we talk in two parts, part one and part two of the podcast. First, about his prior experience as a producer and what led him to become an entrepreneur, and the product that he built and the brand and the way that he went about it, where he was not relying on overseas suppliers and not selling on Amazon, and really focusing in on the customer by actually speaking to the customer, learning the language that they spoke, what they liked, what they didn't like about the product, the brand, the website, using that information to make some changes. And in one case, seeing a 25% bump in conversion rate. Some really interesting stuff there in the first part of the podcast. The second part, we jump more into his EXITpreneur experience in terms of selling the brand using our top advisor here, our good buddy, Chuck Mullins. He speaks incredibly highly of Chuck. So if any of you want to reach out to Chuck directly and have him take a look at your business, please do. He can be reached at chuck@quietlight.com. So part one, here we go. Dan, welcome to the Quiet Light Podcast. How are you today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Dan, folks, is an EXITpreneur. He sold his business using Mr. Chuck Mullins as his advisor. I'm going to talk a little bit about his story, his background, how he built his business, how he exited his business, and what he's doing now. So Dan, rather than me guessing and looking at LinkedIn profile and talking to Chuck about your background, I want you to tell the audience who you are, what your history is like, and how you got into the CPG market that you got into.
All right, cool. Well, I live in California, which is a great sunny place. And most of my career, I was an entertainment executive. So I produced TV shows or was an executive at places like Fox and Playboy. And so I had this kind of magic career making really fun TV shows and getting paid for it. So that was exciting for me. And then when I was working at Playboy, I ended up launching digital channels for Playboy. This was about 10 years ago, and they were instantly profitable. And I found that I was really good at using content. So that's stills and videos to generate good traffic, quality traffic that would convert, not only in the US, but particularly in Japan. And so I found that I was able to make a profitable business in digital marketing. And so essentially I said, well, why am I doing this for Playboy's money? Why don't I do it for myself? But I knew that making a media business was not necessarily easy. It wasn't easy to make a profitable media business. There's high entry costs and low margins unless you have just a massive hit. But I knew that Apple was generating approximately 220 million new customers a year for iPhones. They were selling these that many phones a year. And I also saw that OtterBox was selling cases for $70. So what I saw was there was a price point that was established, and that Apple was sort of this wind of value that they were creating, or marketing that Apple was creating. And so I figured if I could hang my sail up in front of Apple's wind of marketing, then that would be a really profitable business, one that I could bootstrap, that wouldn't require a huge investment in media. And so I created a product that would be manufactured in Los Angeles. So it was a modular product, so we wouldn't have to invest huge amount in inventory overseas and then bring pallets full of product into the US. So we had this modular product that we would manufacture only after we sold and collected the revenue. So I had two elements that were good, and I thought for to bootstrap a business. One is my marketing capabilities that I had proven with an existing product. So I was taking a methodology that was already in place and then applying it to a high margin, just-in-time manufactured product. So I wouldn't need a lot of money to get it going. And so that's the essence of the business that we started.
Yeah, this comes with experience and wisdom doing it that way, right? Just-in-time inventory, things of that nature. But you still had to buy the parts, right? So you bought the parts, had them shipped, or did you buy them in the US, have them sent to your manufacturing facility and assemble the parts?
Well,
when it was being shipped?
When we started the business.
When was that, by the way? What year?
That was 2014.
Okay, well ahead of shipping and freight issues and inventory challenges.
So we started the business. We used white label bumpers that we got from China, and then we added this wallet component to the product. So it was wood and fabric that we used, and so we took the white label bumpers from China and had the components for the product for each iPhone model and each color at the factory. And when orders came in, we would then assemble. So you had, components that probably had, let's just say, $3.50 in value for a $60 product. So the manufacturing, which is the most expensive component, would only be engaged once the revenue was in. So we had to invest in the bumpers were a long lead item, but all the other items were relatively short.
So folks, we're not giving out the brand name here because it's been sold. We're just talking about and we're not going to say how much it was sold for.
Yeah.
But obviously he's talking about an iPhone case that has a wallet component to it. The margins sound pretty damn incredible, Dan. Launched in 2014. 8 years ago, well ahead of the curve in terms of figuring online businesses. There's not that many that I talk to these days that were launched that long ago. So good on you. That's great. I just have to throw in something here because the guys listening to this podcast are going, Joe, ask him about Playboy. So I'm just going to say, Dan, did you go into this business because you wanted to, or because your wife refused to let you work for Playboy anymore? Straight up answer.
Okay. Before I worked at Playboy, I worked at Fox Family Channel. And that's where my wife married me, when I was working at Fox Family Channel. But it was soon after we got married that I needed to find a different career. Fox Family Channel got purchased by another company, and that happens in Hollywood all the time. And so when I explained to her the financial value of the work I was about to do, she was fine with it.
So the financial value of you looking at beautiful naked women all day long,
of the mortgage getting paid,
right? Yes, yes, of course,
yeah,
of course. So when you launched this business back in 2014, did you, or within the first 12 months, you talk about getting the bumpers and things of that nature, did you do third-party contract for the warehousing and assembly, or did you rent a space, go old school, and hire people to do it themselves?
Well, here's the one thing where it started. My wife, who was an Accenture consultant, so she's my ops consultant. We made a deal. I think I came up with the idea for the product in August 2013. And we made a deal that we were going to invest about $10,000 in the business and get it launched on that $10,000. So I figured I had about a 3-month period to design the product, build a website, and launch it. And that's what we did. We started in September. We launched it in January. So in order to do that, I made the first 1,000 cases in my garage. So I built the product and shipped the product. And then after about 6 months, once we knew we had a flow and everything was working great, then we did a Kickstarter. And the Kickstarter was really the Kickstarter that really sort of amped us to the next level. And at the point that we launched the Kickstarter, then we moved into a 3PL facility in Los Angeles. And the 3PL facility was not just shipping, it was assembly and manufacturing in the same facility. So basically, it was an assembly facility that added shipping.
Right.
So
nice thing about your product is that it didn't take up much space, I would imagine.
It was a tiny amount of space.
Yeah.
Also, just in time doesn't work if you don't have shipping where manufacturing is. So that was sort of the key to making it efficient was, basically we use Shipping Easy, and orders came into Shipping Easy, and the 3PL facility printed a pick list and made the products and shipped them the same day.
So let's talk about, this is a very, very competitive niche that you're in, especially today.
Yeah.
Going back to 2014, 15, 16, when the business was just really taking off for you, were you just ahead of the curve and therefore there wasn't that much competition? Or did you do something that was unique and different because of your background and experience that got you ahead of the competition?
Yeah. First of all, I think there was many iPhone cases back then. It was a very well-established market. But I just saw it. As I said, the 220 million units being sold and the price point. I said, I don't have to get a very big percentage of that to actually have a profitable business. I mean, it's a microscopic percentage. And so all I knew from my experience in Hollywood is you just need to be different. You need to look different, feel different, function better. And then that was a pretty easy layup. And so one of the first things that we did was we designed it. One thing I noticed was that in Google Shopping at that time, if you typed iPhone wallet case, what you would see was black and brown, black plastic, brown leather. That was it. So I designed the product with colorful horizontal stripes. So it was really just the concept of the product was designed for Google Shopping. You go and you type in search in Google Shopping, you see brown, black, and then you see orange and blue stripes with wood. People's eyes would catch that, and they would click. They may buy the black case, but they're going to click to look at the colorful case. So it's sort of like dangling something kind of pretty in people's eyes. So what I found, and I think it was clear throughout the whole arc of the business, was that Google Shopping was a very powerful channel for us.
And it remained that even in the last few years?
Through the end, it was for new customer acquisition, it was always the most powerful channel for us.
What percentage of your... I'm sorry, go ahead. What you found? Go ahead.
Well, what I found was that if you Google's algorithm, and I don't understand it that well, but their AI, it seemed to encourage good performance. That's conversion rate, customer service, SEO. And what we found was the better we did in those metrics, the more share of impressions we got. So you don't get Google Shopping impressions because you bid. Google wants the platform to be profitable for them, and they want customers to have good experiences. So if you're providing a good experience, you get more impressions, and the product and the platform becomes more valuable.
This is fascinating. I don't think I've had anybody on that's talked about Google Shopping and the revenue that they're generating from Google Shopping. It's maybe ad spend on Amazon organic, or even PPC on Google and Instagram and things of that nature. So this is great stuff. What percentage of your revenue by the time you exited the business was from Google Shopping versus other traffic sources?
Well, I would say it's difficult to say exactly, because one thing that we always focused on was just first impression. If you look at Facebook, especially, they're always trying to grab last impression. Where was the last click before the buy? My feeling is if you're really good at running a website, you're going to retarget people with emails and all sorts of other methodologies. So and if you have a good product and a good presentation, I'm not concerned so much about how we get people to the bottom of the funnel, because I know how to do that. I have the technology and the expertise to get people through the funnel. But getting people in the top of the funnel, I found is where you can spend a lot of money and inefficiently. And
inefficiently or
inefficiently? It's very inefficient.
Yeah.
But Google has, if you look in Google Analytics at the very, I forget the name of it, I apologize, I don't know what's left in last week's, but if you look in Google Analytics at the very bottom of the left, there is the shared, I forget exactly the term, but it's the shared tracking where you can click and see who your first impression was, where they first saw your website. So Google Analytics gives you 10,000 bits of data. I found that was the most valuable. So here's some advice. That's the most valuable piece of data. And if we want, at the end, I'll pop it open and I'll give you the link to the Google Analytics section that allows you to do this.
Yeah. Does it show? It shows where they first found your site, but
exactly.
Even though they might have come in from a different channel.
Do you mind? I'll pop it up right now. I'll just give you all the information.
Yeah. For those that are listening instead of watching, this will be available on the Quiet Light website under Learn Podcasts, and you'll be able to pop it up there about.
All right. So if you go into, I apologize, I'm looking at Google Analytics right now. I'm not looking at the camera, but if you look into Google Analytics at the bottom at conversions, they have multi-channel funnels, okay? And then you go into assisted conversions, okay? If you look under, or maybe I apologize, it's model comparison tool. Actually, my Google Analytics is no longer connected to the business. Oh, hold on, wait a second. I'm getting into the right business. Give me 1 second. Here we go. Website data. I apologize. I should have had this open.
Well, we don't prepare for these podcasts, so there's no way you would have had it open.
All right. So you go into Google Analytics. The very last item in the left-hand nav is conversions. You click conversions, then you click multi-channel funnels, and then you click model comparison tool. Okay, well, model comparison tool then has these different models you can look at, last interaction, and you click first interaction. Okay, so first interaction tells you, based on a conversion, where was the main site, the first site that got you there? And what I found pretty consistently with our business was that Google paid search, this is Google Shopping primarily, and organic search were our main drivers. We found that for a period of about 3 years, up until about 2018, Facebook was very valuable. We could put UTM codes into our Google ads, so you can track, once you have a UTM code in the URL that you place in your Facebook ad. If you have a properly formatted UTM code, then Google Model Comparison Tool will track that conversion. And what we found was up until 2018, we would have approximately 3 times as many conversions off of Google than we would off of Facebook. But around 2018, the Facebook percentage just started to die. No matter what we did in Facebook, we weren't seeing the first interaction performance that we saw on Google. And then that once Apple sort of killed off the cookie or the tracking, then Facebook, at least in our opinion, just became, you invest in Facebook just because you know that there's traffic there, but you have no sense. We had no sense that we could really track the conversions.
Yeah, that's interesting. Good piece of information there. I do need to have at some point a Google Analytics expert that knows absolutely everything about GA on the podcast. So anybody listening, if you've got a contact, please send me an email, joe@quietlight.com.
Yeah, I've told you everything I know about Google Analytics. I can't give you any more information.
Back in 2018, when Facebook did an algorithm update and then Apple made their changes, were you able to replace that revenue that was lost, or did your revenue decline over a period of time?
Throughout let's say it's 8 years that we have the business, our revenue grew pretty much 30% a year, sometimes a little, the online revenue, not the stores, that was completely different, but we had pretty consistent 30% a year growth. And we were funding our advertising from revenue. So, there was no outside investment coming in to buy ads to sort of turbocharge growth and make us hockey stick. So revenue was up, but what we saw was that conversion rate was an interesting way for us to invest our money. So basically I saw that the ROI on investments in conversion rate was much higher than the ROI on a marginal investment in ads. So we repurposed some of our ad spend into Google, but we really focused, we decided in approximately, I think 2017, 2018, that we were going to focus our brain trust, our power, our internal skills, not so much on growing growing traffic, but converting the traffic that we got. So what we focused on was a consistent monthly or quarterly improvement in conversion rate.
And how did you improve that? How did you improve the conversion rate? New landing pages?
Marketing? Well, I think this is the key. First, we did a little research. And so if you do research on conversion rate improvement, I think you see, in my opinion, a lot of pablum. What color is your buy button? How many words are you using? And we had already done all that stuff. So there's a methodology that I learned not well in Hollywood doing focus groups. So Hollywood uses focus groups to test product and get the real people's view on what's working or not on your TV show. Mm-hmm. And it's very expensive, and we weren't going to spend that kind of money. But what we did do is say, okay, we're going to try and interview one customer a week on the phone, very analog. So we reach out to customers and say, hey, we'll give you a free case, talk with us for 15, 20 minutes. And then whenever we get on the phone, we would ask the customer, hey, tell me about yourself. And then whatever the customer would say, we would say, hey, that's interesting, tell me more. And that was the key to our improvements in conversion rate. What we did, once you get people talking about themselves, they're going to be honest with you. And they'll start telling you, oh, I really didn't like this thing on your website. Oh, I wish you had. If you talk to them for about 10 minutes about themselves, then they're like, oh, I like you. We're in love a little bit. I'm going to be honest with you. And so what we found was 19 out of 20 of the people will say something, but it's not going to be earth-shattering. It's not going to be something that we didn't think about. But 1 out of 20 is going to say something that made me go, and this is, I think, my experience in Hollywood, to be able to go, what's a good idea? Sort through sort the wheat from the chaff. And so what we found was pretty consistently 1 out of 20 people would say something that would make me go, oh, that's interesting. Or something that they weren't saying. For example, when we started our product, because I'd worked at Playboy, I was really good at shooting stuff at the beach. So everything was people running around the beach with a phone wallet case, which really are not using a phone wallet case at the beach. But it worked really well. What we saw in our reviews and our interviews was that customers would talk about, oh, California, like this, California, California, California. But then at some point, they weren't saying California anymore. And we realized that brand story, we've moved from this sort of flashy brand story to more of a functionality. Like people were buying the product because it worked really well. They liked the functionality and they repeated they bought again and again. So we stopped hearing about California. And so we just basically moved our photography and video team inland to downtown LA and started showing people engaging with the product in a better representation of what they were engaging with the product, which is going out for coffee or getting on the subway. And so that one change, just basically taking our photo team and moving it 10 miles inland, we saw after about 2 months a 25% improvement in conversion rate.
Wow, that's fantastic.
And so there were probably every year we would get 1 or 2 really good nuggets from our customers that we would use that would drive our modifications on the website, to what we found was we used fewer words, but we used words that our customers were saying to us in these conversations. So we were really tracking the way they described the product and made sure that we weren't selling the product using our terms. We were selling it. We had blasted enough. We had enough relationships with customers that they knew who we were. They knew who our product was. So when they said it, their terminology was a better representation of what new customers would speak. And so we found that, in general, that worked really well. Also, we stopped showing people's faces.
I noticed that on the site. Again, we're not going to name site, but I don't see a single person's face. Well, there's one that's very blurry, but it's only your chin.
Only the reviews. So when customers gave us reviews, we would have customers' faces. So that would show that these were real people and what they looked like and the people connected. But our models, you would only see their hands and their torsos so that people could see themselves, and also very neutral colors, grays, not a lot of flashy colors, a lot of grays and blues and neutral colors, also that the products were colorful. So we wanted to have neutral backgrounds so the products would pop.
This is interesting in that, the courage, and I'm going to call it courage because some business owners are not comfortable reaching out and having a conversation with their customers, but the courage to actually pick up the phone and call the customer. So I want to ask, did you initially make those calls, or did you always make those calls, or did you outsource it to, or have an employee do it?
I made the first calls for the first few months so that I established the way the conversation would go, and the sort of the tone of the conversations. And then we had our customer service guy who was really a writer. He was a really good storyteller. And then we just started having him do the calls. And I think he did a better job than I did. He was very good at making people feel comfortable.
What was the secret to actually taking that conversation and documenting that conversation in a way that you could look at these keywords that they said, or suggestions or comments that they made?
I wish I could say it was fancy. It was a Google Doc. So, it's just, I'd scan it. Like I would wait until we had like 4 interviews and then I would just scan them.
He would just take notes on the conversation.
Yeah. He would just take notes on the conversations. And I think as we talk about how you launch a bootstrap, mm-hmm. When you're bootstrapping a business, a lot of times, especially if you look on Shark Tank, okay, and or Kickstarter is a better example. If you look at a Kickstarter, or at least when I was doing Kickstarters, you would see 5 people. Okay, I got my VP of blah 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 blah, the VP of this, and there would be 5 people there, and they hadn't made a nickel yet. Mm-hmm. So what I found was that if I have these assets, was my experience running entertainment companies and making good creative decisions and listening for stories and trying to find the essence or kernel in a story that people will relate to. So I would say, you didn't ask, but I would say the best advice I have for bootstrapping is really doing a good inventory of what are your personal assets. What do you bring to the table that's going to be free? You're going to have to pay for this. Mm-hmm. And I think if we kind of listen to the things we've said, it's all based on. Also, I ran Playboy's DVD business, and so I understood about inventory and inventory costs and the financial costs of getting stuck with inventory, and that's why I was very clear to me I was going to do just-in-time manufacturing.
My kids would be like, Dan, what is a DVD? What is that?
Exactly. They're very expensive to store, and they're very expensive to destroy. So imagine. When I launched my business, I was able to learn that on Playboy's stuff. Yeah. What are creative ways, we can look at problems and avoid problems when I'm paying. Like when it's my checking account, the cash is going out, it forces you to focus.
Well, all that's fascinating on the bootstrap and building the business and growing it, mm-hmm. By making every dollar count, and reaching out and talking to the customers yourselves. This is something that I don't think we do enough of. In fact, I need to redesign my website. I need to start calling customers and say, I know it's bad. What would you do differently? What were you hoping for? What am I not providing for you, both on the Quiet Light side and on the EXITpreneur side?